So today we're going to talk about the last Dune book in Frank Herbert's original series, Chapterhouse DUNE. I want to preface this video by saying that, this series had its ups and downs. It has its problems. There are disappointing aspects of this series. So I'm going to do a separate video, a sort of overview of the entire series. But now, in this video, we're going to talk about Chapterhouse DUNE, the last book written by Frank Herbert. And unfortunately, just like with Heretics of Dune, this book was unsatisfactory. It was a letdown. It was a disappointment. If you watch my video on Heretics of Dune, that is where I believe that this series went downhill. It just went downhill. And let me tell you why these two books, Heretics and Chapterhouse, aren't as good as the previous four. Dune, Dune Messiah, Children of Dune, and God Emperor of Dune. They had their problems as well, but they had also, they had moments of genius in them, right? Those four books are better than the last two books. And I'm going to tell you why these two books fail. The last two books fail because Frank Herbert made a decision as a novelist that is baffling to me. Because I'm also a writer, and let me tell you why this is so shocking to me. Because Frank Herbert did something that is almost taboo. He took the main cast of characters. Some of them you might like. Paul, Lady Jessica, Chani, Ganima, Aaliyah, even Vladimir Harkonnen, and so on. So he took the main cast of characters and he removed them from the story. Okay, so the main cast of characters, they're gone. Paul, Leto, everybody, they're gone. They're never coming back. And now in these two final books, we have a cast of secondary or even third-rate characters that nobody cares about. That is why these two last books fail miserably as novels. Okay? You cannot take these beloved characters and replace them with secondary or third-rate characters that nobody cares about. As with Heretics of Dune, Chapterhouse DUNE has this problem as well. I do not care about the characters. I do not care about the Bene Gesserits. I don't care about that Clay Laxu guy. I don't care about the Honorable Matres. I don't care about Dunkin' Donuts Idaho and Marbella. I don't care about Otrade and her scuffles with Tamerlane and Belanda. And it keeps going on and on. All of these characters, and Miles Tagg and all of these characters, they are unimportant to me. They do not shine to me. They are not important. They are not as endearing as the previous characters in the previous books, right? So that is why I believe that these two books fail miserably. Let's talk about this final book. For hundreds of pages, we have nothing but talking, nothing about what's really going on. What we have for hundreds of pages, we have the Bene Gesserit planet, and then we have the Mother Superior Otrade, and we have all of these back and forths with all of these other Bene Gesserits, and she's trying to come up with a plan to, defeat the Honorable Matres, etc. And we have hundreds of pages of monologues and dialogues and conversations and talking and descriptions about the Bene Gesserit stronghold, and we're gonna talk about trees and the fruits and the herbs and the food, and Otrade likes oysters or whatever the fuck. And everything on the Bene Gesserit planet, it's so systematized, so mechanical, so systematic that it's like a real machine, right? So the Bene Gesserit operates as a sort of ant colony, right? And we get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages of descriptions about their trees and how well organized they are and yada yada yada, right? A lot of nothing. A lot of nothing happens in this book. What else? Right? Dunkin' Donuts, Idaho, yet again, of course, it shouldn't come as a shock. He is a recurring character. He is the only character from the original cast that keeps coming back for some reason. I don't understand it. Of course, he has no impact on the story. He has no impact on the pages. He's a disappointment as well. He is being kept. He is trapped in a ship by the Bene Gesserits. He shares this ship with Marbella, and they have some kids. And in the previous book, Miles Tegg died while the planet Arrakis was destroyed by the Honorable Matres. And now the Bene Gesserits have made a Gola of Miles Tegg, and it is up to Dunkin' Donuts, Idaho to revive his memories. If you remember, in the previous book, the roles were reversed, right? So this is questionable. I don't understand how the Bene Gesserits are now the main protagonists. I don't understand why. And these Honorable Matres have come back, and now they are the main antagonists. And they're just going around, blowing up planets, killing Bene Gesserits, and nobody does anything to stop them. And I don't really understand why this is. Nobody does anything to stop these Honorable Matres that are going around killing everybody. Blowing up planets, they destroyed Arrakis with the sandworms, with the spice, right? They're destroying planets, nobody does anything, right? Are you telling me that the Bene Gesserits, they don't have fucking lasers? Uh, right? They, all the other, let's call them races or groups that are still out here in the old empire, none of them can band together and defeat these crazy bitches. Nobody, for some reason, right? And I get that the Bene Gesserits, their philosophy is that sometimes it is not wise to attack directly, which is, of course, correct. But, they're just letting planet after planet, and their people, they're letting them being killed. Nobody does anything. And what we do get, instead of any retaliation, what we do get is pages and chapters after chapters of Otrade, Darwi, this mother superior of the Bene Gesserits, and we learn and we read about how tired she is and how demanding her job is, and oh boy, she likes to eat oysters and she likes to swim in the ocean and she goes to check up on the desert, and it's just I'm gonna say it, just like the previous book, Chapterhouse Dune was a drag to read. It was a hassle. It was a chore. It was not fun. It was not intriguing. And I'll say it again, I'll repeat myself, Frank Herbert is not a bad writer. He has brilliant ideas when it comes to politics, religion, economy, beliefs, traditions, uh, governance, leaders, politics, society, societal taboos, whatever, philosophy. He has great ideas. What he's not good at, he is not good at telling a good story. And even more importantly, he fails to write endearing human characters that readers could possibly relate to. I mean, the only time maybe we were really engaged in a character was in the first book when a young Paul Atreides was in the desert struggling, right? That was the only time we really felt a connection to a character. After that, it all went downhill. So that's the problem with Frank Herbert's writing. He is not a bad writer, he just can't write good characters, good story. He has wonderful ideas, and a lot of sci-fi writers, they have good ideas, but they're just bad writers. When it comes to storytelling, they're bad. They're bad at it. Okay, and that's just my opinion. Another problem. We have this Sheena character. If you remember from the previous book, she is a descendant of the Fremens, probably from Siona as well, and she can somehow control or communicate or tame the sandworms. They brought a sandworm from Dune before it was destroyed, and now the Bene Gesserit planet is in the process of becoming another Dune. So the desert is overtaking the Bene Gesserit planet. But this Sheena character, I was led to believe that she would become our protagonist. She has the power to control or manipulate the sandworms, and I thought that would be explained somehow. And it wasn't explained at all why she can do what she can do. She does this weird dance, and wouldn't you know it, the sandworms, they just vibe to it. The sandworms be vibing to this Sheena character's dance, and I don't understand it, and it is never explained. It is actually put in the background, on the back burner. Sheena is not an important character. She wasn't important in the previous book. She is not important in the last book. She's just kind of there. She is part of the Bene Gesserit. She has a thing with Idaho. She does some art stuff. She is looking out for the sandworms to appear. Then they appear. And that's about it. Her character is just stale, one dimensional. She is not protagonist material. And here's another thing. Like, besides Leto, the second, and Paul, we don't have protagonist material in any way, shape, or form in these 6 books. Not one. And also, when it comes to the antagonists, you know, except Vladimir Harkonnen, there are no antagonists in this book series that I take seriously because they're all a joke. The Tleilaxu, the Bene Tleilaxu, they are a joke. The Ixians are a joke. The Space Guild is almost inexistent. The CHOAM organization, whatever it was called, completely, it was nothing. The royal houses, they are nothing anymore. The Great Empire, it's gone. And of course, these honorable matres are a joke. They are a joke. I cannot take them seriously, and I also cannot take the Bene Gesserits seriously. They are all a joke. I am not impressed by them. They are a disappointment. It seems like the honorable matres. It seems like they are a goofy caricature of the Bene Gesserit. That's what it seems to me. And that is not a compliment, because the Bene Gesserits themselves are a joke, right? So this entire book, it is a waste of time for hundreds of pages. Nothing really happens. There is a lot of squabbling between the higher ups in the Bene Gesserits, which I was not fond of reading. It was a bad experience, right? Uh, Otrade and Tamerlane and Belanda constantly arguing and constantly being at each other's throats was just getting old. It was getting stale after a while, and I was just done with it. I just read it. I didn't care. I was not invested, right? Here are two things, yet again, that could be intriguing, but they are never really explained. They're mysteries, and there's just not enough information material to keep me hooked. Miles Tegg in Heretics of Dune unlocked some sort of crazy power that made him move really fast. He couldn't be detected. He just destroyed the Honorable Matres. And it is not really explained what his power or powers is or are. And now we have Dunkin' Donuts, Idaho, and he might be a candidate for another Kwisatz Haderach. He has developed in this final book, Chapterhouse, he has developed some sort of bizarre cosmic interdimensional prescience or perception. He can see. He can see these two old people gardening, right? And we don't really know who these people are until the last couple of pages of this book. And this has been one of the two main mysteries that has kept this book series so intriguing. We have these two old people at the end. I think their names are Daniel and Marty. It seems that they are face dancers that have become sentient, and they have crazy prescience, right? It seems that they know about Dunkin' Donuts, Idaho, and his powers, but we don't get a lot of information or confirmations, right? So it seems that Daniel and Marty are these uh, these face dancers that have escaped their Teilaxu masters, and they have developed sentience and their own powers, right? Which follows this old saying that you know uh, your creation will inevitably you know elevate beyond your skill set, right? So your creation will unavoidably become better than you. And that is what has happened with these face dancers. A big mystery in this book is we find out that these honorable matres have run away from some sort of uber powerful enemy. We don't know who this enemy is. All throughout the book, Otrade and the rest, they speculate that these honorable matres, they surely must have fled from their galaxy, because they have encountered some terrifying enemy, and we don't know who this enemy is. We don't really get any subtle clues or hints. What we do get, bits and pieces of information, we understand that that these honorable matres, they had been enslaved a long time by these enemies. And that is why they are now these cruel, crazy bitches, basically. But we don't really find out who this terrifying enemy is. But the honorable matres came into our galaxy, and because they fled from this enemy, and now they are attacking the Bene Gesserits for some crazy, stupid reason that I don't understand, right? Because it seems to me that this terrifying enemy will come into our galaxy, right? And they're gonna take over and they're gonna ravage everybody. So, to me, it seems like the reasonable solution is for the Bene Gesserits and the Honorable Matres to team up, and maybe they stand a chance against this uh, horrible enemy. And that is, it is hinted at that this is what happens at the end of this book. The Honorable Matres and the Bene Gesserits, they have come to some sort of an agreement. They have merged their two organizations, and that's about it, right? So the real stupid thing that didn't make any sense to me in this book, right? The Honorable Matres, they operate so insanely illogical. They operate uh, only on instinct, on pure responses that have nothing to do with rationality. They're being allegedly chased by these overpowering foes, and instead of trying to gather allies, they come here and they destroy whatever they touch, right? And they behave like tyrants even though they're actually just fleeing, right? They're fleeing from somebody who's more powerful than them, and yet they behave like they are all powerful. But here's the dumbest thing that I have found in this book. Okay, so the Honorable Matres and the Bene Gesserit, they are merging. They are becoming one, and this would have been the perfect opportunity for the Honorable Matres to tell the Bene Gesserit who this great enemy, this great foe is. But it doesn't really happen, and this is just dumb. This is just dumb. We need to know who our enemy is. They don't really talk about it at all. They behave like this enemy doesn't exist, like this enemy isn't coming to get our asses, right? And it is just dumb. It is just hilarious to me that they behave in this manner at the end of the book instead of just coming out and saying it who these enemies are. And I guess this is the author's way of trying to build up suspense and trying to build up the mystery, right? So on one hand, it might be some sort of Tleilaxu. On the other hand, it might be a machine creation by the Ixians. On the other hand, it might be these sentient face dancers that have attained new powers that are superior to even the God Emperor Leto. And yet, on the other hand, the enemy might also be the horde of machines. Because, and I think this is the closest to the real answer, it makes sense to me that this real enemy, it should be machines. Because it would make perfect sense. It would make the circle complete. Because we start this book series finding out that there was this Butlerian jihad. The machines were getting too smart. People were relying on machines too much, so they went out of their way to destroy these machines. It was a crazy jihad. But of course, obviously, some machines had to have escaped. And it would make sense to me that this terrifying enemy, it should be machines that are even more superior to everything we know. It makes the most sense. But of course, we have this conundrum with Daniel and Marty. Who knows what they really are? Because obviously, in essence, they are machines created by the Tleilaxu, right? But we don't really know, and we will probably never really know. And of course, I'm not going to read all the other extra books written by Frank Sun and what have you, right? Because they're not the original the original work written by the original author, right? So to me, those books don't count. This book, just like Heretics, was a drag. It was a disappointment. None of the characters shined at all. It was just a drag to read about their day-to-day activities, and Otrada being so tired. Right. And let me finish off with this. The way Paul Atreides died, it was just shameful. It was just atrocious. The way Leto the second died was just goofy, right? But the way Darwi Otrada died, it was just hilarious to me. The way she died, it was just, I don't know what to tell you. It was just a joke. It just happens off screen, and then we find out that she got choked to death by some random character. And my answer is, of course, why should I care? I don't care about any of these characters, right? So now, uh, the Bene Gesserit planet is about to become another Arrakis. The sandworms have appeared, although they are small. I don't know what that means. Their size is questionable. We don't really know what that means. But, of course, we have another Arrakis is about to be born. And at the end, Dunkin' Donuts, Idaho, and Sheena, they leave for another galaxy or whatever they go. And we are left with a lot of questions. Essentially, we don't know nothing about nothing. Because of Leto the second, he kept people repressed and he applied a lot of limitations. After he died, many people, they just went everywhere in the universe, and after thousands of years they came back and they were changed, and they saw some crazy shit, right? And there are a lot of things that we don't know about this dispersion in space. We don't know why. We don't really know why those Bene Gesserits turned into Honorable Matres, right? We don't know how these face dancers have reached a god level of power and prescience that are beyond the powers of even Leto the Second, the God Emperor. I mean, we have a lot of questions. We have no answers, and unfortunately, the author died after writing this book, and the series is forever left on a cliffhanger, and we will never really know any answers. Not really. Um, but that's about it. Uh, in essence, this series is not for me. But apparently, a lot of people hold this series in high regard. Some even claim that this is the greatest achievement in sci-fi literature. Period. Uh, and I don't agree with that at all. I think that it is an above average series. I think that for the time that it was written in, it definitely is, how should I call it? It is ahead of its time, but at the same time, maybe because we are in the 21st century, who knows? In essence, I'm not really impressed by this series. Again, in the four books, uh, there are golden nuggets here and there. Frank writes beautifully about bureaucracy and politics and leaders and religions and so forth. There are some golden nuggets in his writing. But this is not a series that I will ever read again ever because it's just not for me. I am not impressed. And if this series is your favorite, that is fine. That is wonderful. You can tell me why you love this book series so much. I would like to know because I don't get it. I don't consider this series all that great, all that awe-inspiring, and just crazy big-brained. Of course, it is better than a lot of other books, but you know, I don't know what to say. I am just not that overwhelmed by this story. All right, you might have great ideas, but never forget that you have to write a good story first. And then you can sprinkle in your good ideas. But if you have a boring story with boring characters, most readers will not vibe with this book. And I don't vibe with these books at all because they're just stale. Okay, they're bland, they're stale, and they just don't go anywhere. Nothing really happens. The characters, the good ones, have been eliminated a long time ago, like I said, and you cannot have an endearing novel, a wonderful novel. You cannot have a novel, period, without wonderful characters. I'm a writer, I know what I'm talking about. Okay, this should be a lesson to all of you aspiring writers. Let me tell you a secret. You can have a boring story. You can get away with having a boring story, but you will never get away with having boring characters. Never. Never. I don't care how boring your story is, your characters have to be interesting. They have to be endearing. The readers have to be invested in the characters. Most of all, if they are not invested in the characters, it all falls apart, right? It all falls apart. And that is the tragedy of this book series. You had, in the beginning, you had a decent handful of characters that have been eliminated before being developed properly, and then they were replaced with, I mean, who are these characters that we're reading about now? Bella and all of these Benny Gesserit's nobodies, right? And this guy Sitali from the Tleilaxu, the only Tleilaxu that has survived because the Honorable Matras have destroyed the Tleilaxu. Who cares, right? It it's just it's sad, really. This has happened to this book series, and the pace by which he wrote Frank Herbert, it seems to me that he needed at least another 3 books to kind of wrap things up because, I mean, he has hundreds and hundreds of pages in this book talking about trees and fruits and how the trees are aligned and Otrade and the ocean and boy oh boy the desert it's coming and don't you know, I mean, he needed at least 3 other books to finish this series. It's crazy, right? And I'm gonna leave this video with this. I wish that I loved these books more. I wish that I had been invested in this story, in these characters, in these ideas But it all just fell apart, in my view. It just fell apart. It just went nowhere, right? And nothing can change it, right? Nothing can change it. It is what it is, and we just have to move on, right? And all that we can do is we have to find better books to read. So this has been Chapterhouse Dune. Uh, it is a shame because I really wanted to love these books. I wanted to love these characters. I wanted to fall in love with this story, and it didn't happen. I was just disappointed, right? But that's about it, you know. See ya.